Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. We're going to be talking about how to tune your instrument, your student's instrument, how to take care of the instruments. And since I'm a violinist, I'm going to be instructing this workshop from a violinistic point of view, but it's applicable to any of the string instruments. So, yeah, you're welcome to take out your instrument if you'd like or take notes. I'm going to upload this PowerPoint and this video to Blooms for you to access later. And if you ever need any help, feel free to reach out. I'm Joy, and let's get started. So, why is tuning important? First of all, we want all of our students to develop a good ear and to understand what pitches are associated with certain finger placements on the instrument, right? And this isn't possible if our instrument is out of tune. For example, I know that when I place my first finger on the E string on the violin, I will hear the note F, for example. However, if my E string's out of tune, I may hear a totally different note and end up compensating for the out of tune string by moving my finger, or I may just end up playing it totally out of tune. You see how I'm having to play this finger all the way up here instead? So, I just want to ask you guys, which one sounds better, this twinkle? Probably not, right? Or this twinkle. Let's see if I can tune it again. Uh-oh. Or this twinkle. I think the second one sounds better. I think I tuned it a little too far down for my example. So another reason why tuning is important is because our instruments are really, really sensitive to the environment. There's a joke that if you open a door and a cool breeze comes into a room, the violin is totally knocked out of tune, and there's a lot of truth to that joke. Hi, Jamie. So we need to tune our instruments every day right before our practice because chances are at least one of the strings is out of tune. You can consider tuning the instrument vital to the daily care and maintenance of the instrument. We want our instruments and our strings to have a long life, and the more we invest in caring for our instrument every day, the more likely they are to need less repairs in the future. So it's kind of the same way that we as humans need some daily self-care. Our instruments are no different. Lastly, this probably feels the most applicable to our students. If your student plays in an orchestra or an ensemble, it's vital that their strings are in tune with everyone else's, so we get a result that we're all happy with. It's hard enough to play in tune with others when your instrument is tuned properly, but it's nearly impossible to do so if your instrument is out of tune. So let's go to the next slide, and let's talk a little bit about how to care for the instrument. So every day after practice, your student should wipe down the neck, which is here, the fingerboard, this black part, the shoulders, the body, and the chin rest, also the strings. And each student should have been given like a small cloth to wipe down their instrument. If you don't have one, you can just use a soft tissue and wipe down the instrument as so. So I'm wiping down the strings. I'm wiping underneath the strings right here and right here. Just really wiping down the whole body. Also definitely wipe down here because sweat can definitely build up here and here. So every day I just kind of go through this routine as I'm putting my instrument away. And we're doing this because we want to prevent the buildup of oil, rosin, dust, and sweat on the instrument. It can be really difficult to clean later on if we let it build up, and it can damage the varnish of the instrument if we don't do this consistently. So let's talk a little bit about the bow, this guy. So it's important that we don't touch these hairs purposefully. These are made out of horsehair, and they're really, really sensitive to the oils in our hands. So when we touch the bow hair too much, it actually won't be able to speak when we draw our bow against the string. So as you notice, our finger actually touches the bow hair right at this bottom part. A lot of the time, this hair doesn't speak very well, and it can get kind of dirty. Like mine is a little bit dirty. It's turning a little black, and that's just because I've contacted the hair a little bit too much with my hand. So just try to touch it the least amount as possible. And yeah, it's really important to always have the right tension in the bow. We're going to talk about this a little bit more later. But when we take the bow out of the case, we tighten the hairs using the screw at the end right here. And when we're done playing for the day, we loosen the hairs when we put it back in our case. So we'll talk a little bit more about that later. And lastly, we always place the instrument in the case, instrument and the bow in the case between practice to protect them. Because who knows what can happen between practice. Personally, I have a cat who loves to jump around my whole apartment, and I'm always afraid that she's going to jump onto the couch and knock over my violin, so I've learned to put my instrument away between practice. It's also important that we store our instrument in our case in a room temperature location, not somewhere that's too hot or too cold, just because, as we said before, our instruments are really, really sensitive to heat and cold. And we also want to put it on its side. So for example, my instrument is just sort of on its side, or my cases. I just kind of put it on its side or like this because we don't want it to fall over. Yeah, so let's keep going. So basically this is a list of accidents that may happen with the instrument. Sometimes these are inevitable, so don't feel bad if one of these things happens. It's definitely happened to me, so for example, definitely contact us if your sound post falls. And the sound post is the little post. If you take a look in your F-holes, there's a post underneath this bridge. If that falls, definitely contact us as soon as possible. If the bridge falls over, this is the bridge. If it falls over or snaps, let us know and we can definitely help you. If a string breaks and you don't have spare strings, let us know. We can help you put strings back on or teach you how to do that. If the instrument cracks or there's an open seam, these are more temperature related. So just make sure that, if you're storing your instrument in a moderate place, this shouldn't happen. But sometimes it also just happens because of the environment we live in. Like Colorado's very cold and it's also very dry. So sometimes our instruments will have a tendency to crack in that kind of weather. If all the bow hairs snap, that can happen if your bow is just too tight and you have never loosened it. So definitely let us know. We'll probably have to get you a new bow at that point. And if this screw stops tightening, definitely let us know and we can help you with that. So some of these are preventable, but sometimes it just happens. So let us know and we'll help you as the best we can. So this is a picture of the bridge. You can see the image on the left is the bridge standing up totally straight. And what I like to look for is that it's not only parallel with the instrument, or it's not only perpendicular with the instrument, but it's also parallel here with this line. So when you're tuning and making big adjustments using the peg, definitely keep checking on the bridge and make sure it's standing up straight, because we don't want what's on the right to happen, where the bridge is like bending over. If you need to make an adjustment to your bridge, like for example, if it's tilting this way, I would suggest grabbing the bridge. I usually grab it here with my fingers, just pinching, and then I just slowly move it backwards. So never move this part of the bridge, always only just move the top and help it lean back to where it's straight. If you grab the bridge at the bottom, it's going to move the entire thing, and this is actually what's holding the sound post down. The tension of the bridge and the strings is holding the sound post down, so there's a slight chance that the sound post may fall. So just be aware of that. And this is a picture of the bow. So you can see on the left, the hair is tightened. It's just the width of like a pencil. So I could basically just fit my pen right in here. And the images on the right are with the bow hair way too loose, for example, like this, or way too tight. So you see in the picture where the bow hair is too tight, the wood and the hair, they're like perfectly making like an equal sign, right? We definitely don't want that. we want the wood to be like bending in slightly. Um, so yeah, just make sure that you're always instructing your student to either to loosen the bow when they put it away and to tighten it when they're ready to play. And finally, let's talk about how to tune the instrument. So, it's first really important to identify what the goal pitch is. So in other words, know what the string names are for your instrument. And the next slide will have the string names of each instrument. For example, for the violin, the string names are E, A, D, and G, G being the lowest and the thickest. We advise you guys to use a tuning app or an electronic tuner. So if you have a smartphone, you can download a tuning app. I'll go into a few tuning apps I suggest a little later. If you don't have a smartphone, I know that El Sistema has a few electronic tuners that are available. So just feel free to contact us and we can get you an electronic tuner that works just fine. But downloading a free app from the App Store is very convenient if you are able to access a smartphone. And yeah, so also just know your instrument's tuning mechanisms. So these are pegs, and we use these for large adjustments. And these are fine tuners. So I just have one, but we use these for smaller adjustments. So here are the names of the strings. You can see the violin has G, D, A, and E. Viola and cello have C, G, D, and A, and then bass has E, A, D, and G. So it's really important to know your goal pitch when you're using the tuner. And here's just another diagram of fine tuners, which are right here. In the case of your student's instruments, sometimes they can be right here as well. And here are the pegs. So the pegs are for larger adjustments and the fine tuners are for smaller ones. So when you're using the pegs, for instruments like violin or even the cello, I always have the instrument facing towards me. And I always make sure when I'm trying to make the pitch higher, I'm turning the peg away from me this way. At the same time, I'm pushing the peg in this way. So I'm turning it this way and I'm also pushing it in. It's really important to push it in because I'm sure you guys have already encountered this. If you don't push it in, your string might start slipping backwards, and we definitely don't want that to happen, so just try to push in as much as you can into the body. And to make the pitch lower, you turn the peg towards you, so this way, and then you're also pushing in. So pushing in is very, very important, just to prevent your string from unraveling later. Here's a close-up of the fine tuners. So if I were to bring my instrument up, I would be turning the fine tuner to the right, to my right to make the pitch higher. So I'd be turning it like this. Or in the case of the cello, I'd be turning it, yeah, to the right, this way. And if I want to make it lower, I'm going to turn it to the left, this way. So the left, this way, in the case of the violin and the viola. And here are a few tuning apps that I suggest. So the logo on the left is for Instuner, and that is a free tuning app on the App Store. I think there's a free version and also a version that you need to pay for, so definitely get the free version because there's not really any difference. There's also a piano tuner, and this is basically the same thing. I think Instuner might be a little bit better, but either way is great. And then there's also another tuning app called Tonal Energy. This one I think costs maybe $4 in the App Store. And I only like this one because when you're in tune, it gives you a happy face. And when you're really out of tune, it gives you this like very confused face. So sometimes kids like that because they think it's funny. But definitely, I think Instuner or Piano Tuner, they're both great. So this slide is just showing you what your tuner will look like when your string is in tune. So in this case, we are trying to achieve the pitch A. This is piano tuner right here. So do you see how this is where the pitch is right now? It's not exactly on A, right? It's orange. We want it to be green. That's how we know it's in tune. And with this one, you see it's red. It says negative 42 cents. Even though it says A, that's still out of tune. That means it's a little flat. In this case, it's in tune, right? It's green. It's within 3 cents. Yeah. And here's a picture of the ins tuner. So you can see on this dial, it's not exactly there. Even though it says A, it's still in the red, right? It's a little bit flat. And in this case, the A is perfectly, yeah, it's perfectly in tune right here. So that's definitely what we want to look for on that tuning app. And yeah, that's the whole presentation. I hope that was informative, and let's just open it up to any